Hi everyone. Thank you so much for finding time to join me today. If you're a returning subscriber of Migrant Doctor Mom, thank you so much for keeping it here. Thank you for so much love. Thank you for the interactions. And if you're new and you're watching me for the very first time, my name is Anna, Migrant Doctor Mom. I'm a mom. I'm a doctor. I'm a migrant. I live and work in Australia. And yeah, thank you so much for keeping it here. So today's topic is essentially just a wind up of my last video on how I got my first job as an IMG in Australia with only AMC1. So if you haven't watched that other video, please find time and watch it. It essentially starts off and tells you how it's essentially just story time, my life, my experience of how I eventually got a job in Australia as an IMG. So look, um, and like I said in the other video, is this video is just essentially to encourage somebody that's thinking about, coming to work in Australia, somebody that is in the process of applying for a job and things are seeming a bit hard. I'm just hoping that I can encourage you that I've been there, done that, and came out on the other side. And I want you to find courage to continue searching because, like I always say, knock as many doors as you can, and one of them is definitely going to open. So, in my other video, I described to you of what I did. So essentially, in a nutshell, and to summarize, is I started the process way back in 2014, and then I did my exams in 2015, and then after about 3 years, then migrated to Australia, and I had found a job as an RMO in one of the hospitals, and it was only with AMC1. So if you remember again from that video, is there were a few things that were working for me and there are some that were not working for me. So for you to get registered as a doctor, you need to have done the exams. So if you are on the standard pathway, you need to have done MC1, MC2, and then you have some English proficiency, recency in practice, and then you and then obviously that's the side of registration. And then in terms of work, you need to have work rights, and by that I mean it's either you need to be on a work sponsored visa, or you need to be a permanent resident or a citizen. At least you need to just be eligible to work in Australia. So for me, like I mentioned in the other video, is there were a few things that were working for me. I had my recency of practice that was, meaning that I was still working at that point in time. I'd done my AMC1, I'd done my English, and I was eligible for limited registration. What wasn't working for me then was the fact that I'd not done AMC2, I didn't have Australian work experience, and then I didn't have work rights. So I didn't have any, visa that would allow me to work and live in Australia. So I think we left off the other video where I was talking to you about how I decided to venture out and try and find myself an observer position. So clinical observership in Australia is essentially where you get an opportunity to work in hospital, not really work, but essentially work, go along with the other doctors as they work. And the advantages of doing a clinical observership in Australia is you get to learn how teams or how doctors manage their patients. You tend to learn the language, you tend to learn how to communicate with peers, and then you tend to learn also get an idea of how the software system works, because trust me, it's different, especially having come from where I'd come from, where we didn't have, a lot of all that we were doing was paper notes. We would write, and then the files would be physical files. But then here in Australia, the software is different. The discharge summaries are on the system, ordering blood tests, checking correspondence from other doctors and stuff like that. So it's very important because the clinical observership gives you an idea so that you can see what sort of software is used, and so you become a bit conversant with how you do things. And clinical observership is not work per se, it's not work experience per se, but it is an opportunity for you to see what people do. Okay, it opens up your mind, it allows you to form those lasting networks that come in handy when you need a reference. The Australian reference, they will come in handy when someone is when there are opportunities, someone may just be able to remember that there was an observer here and stuff like that. So I must say, for me, doing a clinical observership did open quite some doors for me, and was helpful in the long run when eventually I started working. So, why did I decide to do a clinical observership? Um, I'd applied for so many jobs, and I think I've said this before. The process of applying for jobs in Australia is not easy. So you just don't send a CV, you just don't send a standard CV to all the jobs. You have to sit down. There's a selection criteria, which is what they expect you to have. Like for example, they'll say you need to, demonstrate the uh, clinical skills of a resident medical officer, and then they will say you need to have communication skills, and then they will say you need to have, this number of years of experience. So you have to sit down and actually come up with a selection criteria addressing the criteria that has been put down and that's expected of you, and giving specific examples as well of how you are why you should be, you're a good, or you are a good applicant and stuff like that. So essentially, you can imagine for every job there was a selection criteria, and again I had to tailor my CV. Long are the days when you just send a blank CV to all the places, so you would need to tailor your CV depending on what job you are applying for. If you're applying for an EDRMO or an ONG RMO or a general RMO, then every CV would be a bit tailored towards what you're applying for. So you can imagine the number of jobs I had applied for, so many jobs. Sometimes I look at my email and I'm like, wow, the number of jobs I had applied for. So that obviously was taking my time. It was taking, emotional, it takes your time resource. It takes away your emotions. It takes away, the anxiety of wondering will they respond. And most times, a lot of them don't even respond. They don't even respond. And whether it's, because they get a lot of other applications as well, it's possible. But I think for me, luckily, one of them did respond. I think I remember it was Charlie's. They did respond and they told me, try and do a clinical observership. So one may be wondering, how do I get a clinical observership? In my instance, I just wrote emails and emails to various hospitals and said, look, my name is Anna from Kenya, and I'm looking for this observership position. I would like to come and observe this month to this month. And I was doing that ahead because I knew I needed to look for a you know tourist visa to, because you need you need a form of visa. You need to arrange your finances because observership is not a paid position. Neither, your accommodation, your upkeep, your tickets, your visa, you have to come up with all that. So it wasn't an easy time for me, I'll be honest. I did write so many emails. So after a lot of applications, I got a response from one of the hospitals says, look, we are happy to give you an observer position in the duration that you've listed. So obviously then with the letter they had provided, the email, I applied for my tourist visa, got my, my travel documents in place, got leave from work, and then obviously I came to Australia. Um, I think a take-home message for me is, you just have to be persistent. persistent is Persistence is actually key in this process of finding your first job in Australia, because there is so much that's not for you, especially if you're not already in Australia. If you're already in Australia, it's so much easy. My belief is you just need to make an appointment, see people, talk to, walk in offices and speak to those in charge. And but then if you're still overseas, it's even harder, because obviously you are trusting that emails will be responded to. And sometimes if that doesn't work, then you try and follow up with a phone call. But my belief is your presentation, in person, if possible, can be quite helpful, in getting an observer position. So then what happened for me? Remember, I had initially got a first job that somehow just, for whatsoever reason that I may not be able to disclose, is I was later told the vacancy was filled. And so I was in that situation where you had hope that actually you can get a job, and then just, without you realizing, sort of, you end up not getting the job again, getting the job, not getting the job, or whatever. So, I had hope. I had hope because, if they actually interviewed me before, it is possible that I can actually get this thing. So what I thought at that point in time is I would come from observer position, and then I would present myself in person to that specific hospital and say, look, I'm within the country. I'm going to be doing my observership at this place. And then if you're still looking for opportunities, look, I'm really, really keen to work with you guys. Because in my heart of hearts, I thought, if they've given me a job the first time and the issue was just, miscommunication, then they will definitely be able to give me another one in future if they need people. So I went, did my observership. And one key thing about observership, I must say, if you ever get an opportunity to do observership, give it your best. How I look at it is like the word observership. You're watching them, they're watching you. It's an opportunity for you to show, your team, what sort of person you are. Because at the end of the day, we all have our strengths, we all have things that we are good at, we have something that we can bring to the table. So it's an opportunity for you at that point in time to just bring out your A game, and show it out there that you're actually a good doctor, you're a good team player, you can speak English, you can communicate with colleagues, with patients, with their families, and go an extra mile. Just go an extra mile, and show people that you can actually, you would be an asset if you joined their team. um, and remember, it's an opportunity for you to learn as well, because that's the time you'll see how they manage things. You will see how they address situations, because sometimes in medicine it's not about the disease process. Sometimes it is even just the management in terms of resources, who needs to get a HDU bed, who can wait, who needs to transfer to the tertiary hospital, and stuff like that. So it's an opportunity for you to learn, a little bit more, just, even how people, deal with situations, how people deal with met calls, or code blues. And so it's an opportunity for you to pick a thing or two. And I've found that sometimes it's good when you're in that situation, even before your AMC2, because some of the questions in AMC2 may be, around situations that you would have met in hospital. And I would imagine if you've been in that Australian system, be it for 6 weeks, be it for 3 months, comparing to somebody who hasn't, and in a clinical scenario like an AMC2, the person that has had some experience in the Australian system may actually do better, because they are coming from a point of knowledge to a point, of being able to address the situation at hand. So then what happened to me? So what happened to me then is I did my observer position, and I think it went well, because I got some references, I got some Australian references that I could put down as well. And then by the time I was leaving, I, my it was very interesting, because for for the life of me, I'd not put in my application in the RMO campaign for that year. So that meant that I couldn't get a job offer, in the hospital that I had wanted, that had gone for the clinical observership. So obviously, because my name was not in the pool, they said, oh, we would have loved to have you, but really, this time around you didn't apply. But look, if there are any, how it goes. So, but fortunately for me, my other job, where I'd found the initial job, they were gracious enough to take me on board. So by the time I was finishing my clinical observership, I had a job, which was amazing, which was a very good feeling. And I feel like, all IMGs, the issue is just your first job. Once you are in the system, once you have your first APRA registration, then then that's it, because more doors are just going to open and you'll only move from one job to the other and stuff like that. So then, with a job offer, then work visa, then eventually, the process of APRA registration, coming back in, and so that's just in a nutshell, how I was able to get my first job. And remember, for somebody that does only have MC1 and English, I know it's getting harder now, but it is still possible to get a job with just MC1, and especially if you have a lot of experience. Look, if you are, let's say, a registrar, or you've worked in another system where you have the skills that will be helpful in a job situation, here in Australia, people would want to take you on board, because remember, at the end of the day, you are a doctor in your own right. I mean, you have your experience on board that can never be taken away from you, and it's just that you don't have your job, so it's sort of an opportunity for you. And I always tell people that I interact with, don't be shy to say what you're able to do on your selection criteria. That's the only time that I would say it's okay to sort of, quote unquote, brag about your experiences. It's an opportunity for you. Remember, they haven't met you. They're seeing those papers before, or that selection criteria, that soft copy, before they meet you in person. So before you have an opportunity to show who you are, to talk to people about what you can bring on the table, they will be looking at the documentation. So take the time to show people that you can do, you have the skills that they may find really valuable on the team. You have, the ability to communicate. That's very, very key. Sure, write down and put some, the STAR process of doing a selection criteria. Put down, that which you can bring on board, so that if there are four people they are going through, or four like different people they're going through, they look at yours and probably say, this is actually, a good doctor that would like to have on board. So in a nutshell, that's the story of how I got my first job. It wasn't easy. There were a lot of tears in between. There was a lot of disappointment in between. There was a lot of cost implication. There was a lot of time implication. There was a lot of denying oneself, and there was just a lot of sacrifice. But in the end, it has worked out. I look back and I know, and the joy that I get is knowing that I can encourage somebody and tell them, look, I was in your shoes just the other day, and look at how far we've come. And I've had an opportunity to interact with people that have had a job with just MC1, and their story seems to be the same, persistence, 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 um, holding on, pushing, knocking doors, and eventually one will open. So, yeah, go ahead, send in those applications, go ahead, follow them up, and go ahead. And if you have the desire to come and live and work in Australia, or yeah, the opportunities are there, and it is a lovely place to work. So thank you for watching this, and if you're an IMG, I implore on you. If you're an IMG and you've had a job offer, you've had, experiences where you were able to get a job, come on, just comment. And if you think your hospital is IMG friendly, please do comment so that somebody else can get an opportunity. And remember, as I always say, a candle loses nothing by lighting another one. Thank you so much, and God bless.